Hey, Collider fans, welcome to another episode of Thrones Talk. Episode 2 of Season 8 dropped tonight. We are jumping on to talk about it right after the East Coast feed is dropped. So if you haven't watched it yet, do not watch this episode. This is very much going to be full of spoilers. I am one of your hosts here, John Roca, Giants Bane, and we are going to be talking about so many things. I had no idea. I'm going down after this episode. I'm going to Costco around, getting me some Giants milk. I had no idea you could get that large. So there's so much happened in this episode. It all happened in one location. That's Winterfell. We're going to break it all down for you. But let me introduce everybody who's going to be here on the panel discussing it. One of the co-hosts of What the Throne podcast, Ashley Victoria Robinson. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing so good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Are you recovered from Maisie Williams? Are you recovered from Arya's situation?
I don't want to think about that. Right. She's like my little sister.
Well, we all grow up. And one other person.
No.
Haley Fouch, you really didn't like that Arya Stark moment. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Are you excited about it? Did you like this episode overall?
I really did like it. Yes, aside from the nude Arya, which
Sure.
I agree with that. She's like a little sister, and yes, we all grow up. But when you watch a little girl grow up, maybe that's not your favorite thing.
Yeah.
But overall, the episode, I'm super stoked to talk about.
Yeah. There's so much we're going to cover here. And of course, we couldn't do it with the other co-host of What the Throne podcast, our main man there, our Game of Thrones resident expert, that is Dennis Zhang. How are you, Dennis?
I'm doing good. We watched Game of Thrones, so it's always a good day.
We did.
Yeah.
A good night.
Yeah.
But frustrating night for me overall because there were no battle scenes. It was a lot of conversation, talking. I think Dennis Zhang nailed it on the head with his tweet. He said this was the most Lord of the Rings episode of Game of Thrones. I agree. A lot of talking and no action. This is why I don't like that original trilogy that much of Lord of the Rings. But anyway, we'll get past that. Let's jump into this episode. Let's start out with the guy who was kind of the impetus for a lot of what we saw here, and that was Jaime Lannister. We saw him at the end of the first episode arriving at Winterfell, and this starts this whole confrontation because Jaime's got a lot of sins to atone for with a lot of people in this, and this was fun to watch Jaime squirm a little bit but be defiant as well. Haley, you watch this from the beginning, you see what Jaime's reaction, everyone's calling him out on all these things. Did you like the way he was defiant at times but also willing to apologize?
Yeah, I think it was a lovely moment for Jaime, and I think if you're a book reader, it's maybe this is the Jaime we've been waiting for a while, because in the books he leaves Cersei earlier, and so to finally see this version of Jaime that's pretty much fully redeemed is really gratifying and special, and he's such a tremendous actor, and he makes the most. He was a little defiant, but it's not like he gets these over the top emotional scenes to play, but he makes the most of his subtle emotionality. And obviously, not to jump too far ahead, but with him and Brienne, that's a really special thing. And I think that's probably as close as we're going to get for the shippers to seeing them actually be together. That was sort of them consummating. So I love what they did with Jaime in this episode.
Yeah, they use him as a vessel, actually, to tell Dany about Cersei, that she's lying about the whole, once again, calling Tyrion into question in a way for believing Cersei's words about it.
Tyrion can't get a leg up in this world, truly. It's never going to happen.
He surely needs one, and he can't get it, that's for sure. But you watch this whole situation. Dany calls him out, telling the story about her and Viserys would talk to her about what we're going to do to the man who killed our father, blah blah blah. Sansa chimes in and says, hey, you did this to my dad out in the streets. A lot of people are bringing all this stuff up, and Jaime finds his way through it eventually because Brienne vouches for him. Were you proud and surprised? And also, did you have a moment to be like, wow, look how far we've come in these 8 seasons of this show?
Yeah, I think this episode did a really good job at reminding us of Jaime's journey up to this point. I said it when we were watching it. I can't believe that this guy was so icky in season 1, and he did all of these bad things, and now he's really like Mr. Hero guy. He is Cyclops in the X-Men. He's the person that we want to be leading and following, even though he's not capable of doing it the way he was in season 1.
Right.
But he's not ready to do that. I loved when Brienne broached the issue of their relationship, and she stood up for him, not only because it gives her an amazing scene, but to have Sansa flip like that was really cool. It's a subtle dig at Daenerys to be like, oh, well, you really don't like him? Well, then that's fine. Thanks, Brienne. I appreciate that. But it ultimately gets everything turning in the right direction. So even if it might have been a little petty, I was here for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point you bring up, because both Jon and Sansa kind of get up after this whole situation is done and then walk off without talking to Dany. Dennis, you noticed that. What did you think this scene kind of foreshadowed about what might happen happen with Jaime, or what might happen here between the Starks or the pseudo Stark, or the Targaryen Stark and Dany here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about it later. It's not a big reveal to us because we know, but with Jon and Dany and him telling him what he found out last time that we've known for a little while. But with Jaime, it's nice to see his character come to this place, because we've known ever since his journey with Brienne is kind of the turning point of his character, and we've seen him come this way, but no one else has, right? So Sansa doesn't know that he's this way. Only Tyrion does and Brienne does. But I mean, all the deeds that he has done before now get to be spoken about in a light where the one thing that he's kind of, I guess, very sensitive about is his honor, because he's known as the Kingslayer, and then it was it was like a no-win situation. He had to do it, but no one else knows that. They think he's just a murderer, and he did it for power.
That's very thematic in the books, is Jaime's concern about his honor, and like even as far back as when he's approaching Brynden Tully, and like no one will take him at his word. So to see that playing out on screen, I thought was cool.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because doesn't Dany know how much of a nutbag her dad was? And so, so for her to all of a sudden be like, you killed my dad. I didn't like that. Well, look, you set people on fire. I had to do something. And you see this, and that's what I enjoyed about it. Jaime's defiance in that one moment. Look, in the hands of other writers, this could be an easy mea culpa scene. But in fact, he says, I would do it again because we were at war, and this is what I was supposed to do. You would have done the exact same thing in your situation. I'll go back to you, Dennis. After the scene is over, we have Dany walking with Tyrion, and Tyrion is the Hand of the Queen already online, and since the end of last season, there have been a lot of people complaining about how stupid Tyrion has become all of a sudden when he was supposed to be this incredibly intelligent man to be Hand of the Queen. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to run over this, but it was pretty awesome to see two women with another woman stepping forward to defend this man, and Jon was almost an afterthought, a Warden of the North. What do you think? It's very seamless. Don't even. I'll call attention to it only because it's a rarity in these kinds of shows to see it this way, so seamless. Credit to Game of Thrones creators and writers there, and the actors as well, obviously. But okay, so you look at this. Tyrion, he says this line. That's why I want to ask you. I suspect one of you will be wearing this before it's all over. And he's saying it to Varys and Sir Jorah. Do you think this is a little bit of foreshadowing that Tyrion is going to die and the Hand of the Queen is going to be, if she survives this whole thing?
Well, I'm hoping that he redeems himself, because yes, people have been saying since he's gotten left King's Landing that he has made a lot of mistakes. He's made some strategic mistakes in battle, and also, what we saw happen in Meereen, and then this one with Cersei. So hopefully he finds his footing again. I mean, earlier I could say with Meereen and some of the other stuff was like, okay, these are things that he's not familiar with. He's not familiar with military strategy. He's not familiar with the culture and history of Meereen. But now we're back in Westeros, and now he should know his sister. He should know these type of things. So to me, that's his last mistake that he can make. So after this, I expect some pretty intelligent and wise counseling on his part.
Do you think she's being a bit short-sighted? I mean, she's made some mistakes on her own as well as a ruler. Sort of call out Tyrion so viciously seems a bit short-sighted, in my opinion, as I said just a second ago. Do you think so, Haley?
I think Dany's often a short-sighted character. She's very emotionally ruled, and she's actually a pretty decent strategist, long term,
Absolutely.
But she definitely gets overwhelmed by emotion. But she said, you're either a traitor or a fool. And I think that you're onto something, Dennis, that if he messes up again, then in her mind it goes from fool to traitor, maybe, because how many times does this happen? And that line to me, just felt especially pointed. But I thought it was nice to see more of the Tyrion that I love in this episode, because I also feel that he's been dimmed down a bit, last week with you don't have balls, I'm so clever. That's not his type of joke.
That's like season 1 or season 2 Tyrion.
Well, no.
Making those jokes.
In season 1 and season 2, he was actually a really elegant speaker, eloquent speaker, and thoughtful, and would say these things that, you could put on a t-shirt and wear around, and you can't really put you don't have balls on a t-shirt. So I liked seeing this more sensitive side of him. I also liked seeing him whine out a little bit. We haven't got wino Tyrion for a while. So that was a blast.
Okay, you look at we get the dragon glass. axes from Gendry. Gendry tells Arya about his experience fighting the White Walkers. Ashley, this is, I think, is a very poignant scene here because it lays the groundwork for what we're going to see later. And obviously, this started in the first episode. There was already googly eyes going on between them in their version of googly eyes, I guess. But she. Like, he's still kind of a little bit in that vein of like, oh, you're kind of you don't know what you're talking about. I remember you being this young girl. What are you talking about? And she has to kind of school him in that moment because he's saying like, they're tough, they're difficult. And she calls him out on it. And then when he tries to push back at her, she like really hardcore calls him out on it with her viciousness and says like, I need to know what they smell like, how they move, everything, all that jazz. And it kind of like changes the power dynamic in their relationship.
And we get the reminder that she is a faceless woman. She says, death has many faces. I look forward to seeing this one. She's maybe the person who's best equipped to be going into this of all the characters that haven't faced the White Walkers. Right. Because they are very representative of death and she is the least afraid of them. I liked this scene with Gendry. I don't even mind narratively where it leads. I just didn't need to see everything that we saw. And this is the culmination of a storyline. And I've always liked these two characters and I've always sort of liked the romantic undertones to them. I know Haley has other feelings about that necessarily. But so like I didn't mind that, and I thought it was a cool way that we started out in a move that was actually very reflective of Dany and Drogo's relationship. Like he doesn't love her until she takes power back, and that's kind of the same give and take that we have in this scene.
Yep. It's like my girlfriend. She always takes power back from us, and I love it.
Ooh, John.
It's all right. I respect strength. They have this back. We'll go into this now. They have this. He says immediately, "I'll work on your weapons," which is a great button, funny Game of Thrones button. But then let's get to that point. They do later on kind of get together. This is pretty probably the most shocking moment I've seen in quite some time in terms of the sex we had last week. We had Euron and Cersei. That you could accept that to a degree, but this one seemed a little out of the blue. It made sense because you know.
Well, this is your last night on Earth. If you're a young person and you've never done that, I see how that might be near the top of your bucket list.
She's a pragmatist. I respect that.
I mean, we'll ignore the fact that per canon she's about 14 years old because the actress is a lot older, and we have to assume that we're going by their actor ages.
We're out of the books now.
But I think
is that the escape of the Shield? We're off the books.
It is because also Ned Stark's supposed to be 35. So you have to assume that, right, or else it gets really too weird. I think that's why, like, Haley and I are kind of like, oh my God, is because like Arya is a little girl in the books.
It's part of it. It's also partly like the reason I never shipped them, even though they were so popular. It's not like, oh, I hate Arya and Gendry girls. It's just that.
No, that's what you were saying.
That's what I say on camera. Joe Dempsey was so much older than Maisie Williams.
He's exactly 10 years older than her.
Right. So if you take that back to 10 years ago to the start of the series when everybody was shipping them, I was like, good Lord. Now it's less creepy, but I agree that we just didn't need to see everything.
Yeah. Dennis, this scene could have worked without it, but like you still liked that they got together because this was coming.
I mean, I've been a fan of their relationship. I don't know if I actually needed to see the scene so explicitly. I just thought it as more of Arya and Gendry will get together further down the line, maybe even past the show, like the show ends and you just assume they will get together. I don't think I needed to see that. And I think with Arya, it's tough. We saw her when she started off as a little girl. Not only her age, but her character has never been a sexual character. They've never presented her in that way.
She spends most of the show
killing
being
people,
a boy or being like doing these traditionally masculine things
and killing people. And her interests have never lied in romance or anything like that. So when it comes to this part, it was like, oh, okay, I just didn't. That was, I think, the more. I don't know if shocking is the right word. Surprising. Where it was like, surprising. They're actually going forward with this, and they're showing it not graphically, but you know, more than I expected.
But it's interesting that we do see it for Arya and we don't see it for Sansa. Like Sansa and Theon actually kind of make googly eyes at each other at a couple points here, and I was like, what
that's going to happen. That's going to happen at some point. No,
he's dying. He's dying in that next episode. He's a goner.
Theon's going to bite it so quick. But I was surprised because, you know, if you would have followed a classic narrative arc, it would have been Sansa who sort of hooked up with someone.
Well, I do want to also say, like, even though I don't, you know, the age difference has always made me a little icky about that ship and everything, I do like how it was handled. Like, aside from the nudity aspect, I like that she was thoroughly in charge of her own sexuality and very much making the decision. And it wasn't something he was super uncomfortable with either. It was just something nice that happened for these two characters who both decided what they want, which is not always how sexuality works in Game of Thrones.
It's true.
So that was nice to see.
It's a very good point.
To say the least, yeah.
And I like the fact that they had to wear 20 layers, so it took forever for them to get it on.
Winter is here, baby.
Yeah, winter is
cold.
here. As a guy who wears a lot of layers, trust me, I know what that experience is like. So let's move on here to the Jaime and Bran scene. This was something that I think everyone was waiting for since the end of last episode.
Their sex scene was wild.
Their sex scene. Bran didn't even get out of the chair.
That's like
it was
20 years
age difference. It was all in the mind. It was Demolition Man. So Jaime and Bran by the tree. It occurred to me as I'm watching this. Yeah, Bran says he has no anger towards anybody, and there might be something. You think what makes you think there's going to be an afterwards? That's pretty prescient. So you look at this and you're like, well, does Bran have all the secrets? And he's not like, is he his own Reddit thread where he knows all the spoilers to what's going to happen over the next few episodes, but he didn't want to tell anybody? This struck me as I'm watching this scene. What did you think?
Well, I mean, he mentioned he's not Brandon Stark, and he's not anymore. He's a three-eyed raven. He doesn't have emotion. He doesn't have anger towards Jaime, because to him, it's like, what he's thinking about once he's contemplating is beyond like even something what we consider very serious, pushing a kid out of a window.
Right.
To him, it's like that's like not even the part of the point of what's going on. So it was just a nice moment to see that, okay, Jaime as a character now, because before when he did it, I don't think he had any regrets.
He says as much.
Yeah.
And then Bran answers him by saying that if that had never happened, you wouldn't be the person that you are, and I wouldn't be the person I am, which is something that you actually brought up last week and then this episode.
Yeah, and so him, he is much changed character. It's just nice to see them come and make that resolution.
Yeah, I thought so too. Haley, you look at this. I don't know. This scene just kind of struck me in a lot of ways because I don't know. First of all, I don't know how Bran is getting transported all over the place. This is really starting to who is pushing Bran around? I just want to know.
Didn't Tyrion ask him at one point do you need help getting around?
No.
He's like, no, I'm just teleporting left and right. He's got like Nightcrawler's ability.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of intense. How he's just in these moments But this scene, you look at this scene. Is this all these Jaime scenes seem to be laying the groundwork for him to die?
Yeah, he's gonna make it,
and have some kind of sympathy from the audience that this is he's atoning to everybody because he apologized to Bran, and even Bran, who maybe is still Brandon Stark, to throw that little zinger in at the trial at the beginning of the episode when he said, things we do for love. His little dig. So you're just a little Brandon Stark still in the three-eyed raven. One of those eyes is Brandon Stark. So you look at this scene, you say to yourself, well, okay, is the show doing a good job of laying the groundwork for Jaime's eventual death and having us all feel it?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. I think that because this season is really slow rolling so far, and I think we all are just waiting for sort of the boulder to go over the hill, and then there's no stop in the momentum. But both of these episodes have been really focused on reminding everyone of everybody's journey so far. We get Dolores Ed coming back and his reunion with Jon, and they mention Pip and Gren, and we hear, Tyrion references his line from a previous episode about how he'd like to die at the age of 80 with
belly full of wine,
his mouth around his something.
Right.
And it's all sort of this throwback to let us know where they've come from and how much they've been through to get where they're going. I think across the board, Jaime in particular, because he got a real focus in this episode, but just across the board, they're doing a really neat and clean job of reminding us what it took to get everyone to get to a scene where we can have all those favorites having wine together ahead of the fire.
Yeah.
But I that's actually one of my criticisms of this episode, though, because it's a lot of this episode was kind of waxing nostalgic about the whole, basically the whole series as a whole. That's why, when I mentioned that the whole kind of Lord of the Rings, yes, we had that song, which was very similar to Pip singing to Denethor in Return of the King. But there's a lot of sentimentality in this episode where I think when you get that once in a while in Game of Thrones, it's okay. But in this one, it was throughout the episode. It was every scene. And I understand why they're doing it because we're leading to a place where a lot of these people are going to be gone.
Yeah.
So I think the next episode will kind of fill in that void. But I think in this one, it was particularly strong where they just kind of layered it. Because you mentioned that scene with, was it Gren, Sam, and...
Ed.
It's Ed, sorry.
Yeah.
And John, and they were like, and then I think, Sam was like, remember when we all first got together?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, you could tone down a little bit of that.
And I mean, to be critical and to be maybe a little bit negative about it, we know that this season is going to be very, very short. So we have 4 episodes?
Yeah, 4 episodes left.
It makes me, the mean part of me is like, do we really need 2 episodes where kind of nothing happens? Like, we couldn't have done this all in 1 episode, or we couldn't have been 7 episodes or 8 episodes. We might feel different when the 4 roll out and we see what happens, but it's been like, we were promised a lot this season, and it's been a slow start, which some people might not like.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it though, because I mean, we haven't seen them for over a year now, and so 2 years, so having come back and kind of everyone, kind of reconnect and have these deeper conversations after these reunions from last episode. I've kind of liked that, because now we're prepped, now we're ready. We go right now. We saw, Podrick is now a warrior. Grey Worm is training people. Brienne is training people. We have Jaime go and put himself under Brienne's command, which is an incredible thing to see the difference in their relationship. And later on, we'll really see the difference in their relationship. But before we jump into that big drinking scene, I want to talk about these two Jorah and Dany scene, and Dany and Sansa. Definitely the Dany and Sansa scene, more so the Jorah and Dany. But Sir Jorah and Dany have this scene where they're talking about, and she says, "Oh, I made Tyrion hand the queen because you weren't around, because of course Jorah was spying on her initially, and then sent him away a second time when he tried to beg, and he got the grayscale and everything like that." So, but she, Jorah says to her, you got owning your mistakes, as Tyrion learns from his mistakes. And I felt like this was a little subtle way of the show saying to her, hey, you need to learn from your mistakes a little bit too, being the freer of Marine and all this kind of stuff. Look at all the things that all the mistakes you've made here, because that Targaryen blood flares up in certain moments, and you see it.
Her Viserys comes out.
Literally, the rest of the episode, all of her scenes, you're watching her throwing matches and burning bridges before this battle happens. She does it with Sansa.
Yeah.
You literally see the moment where she falls out of love with Jon and thinks about killing him in the crypt. And it's tough because Dany, for me, is a very mixed bag character, and to see the unlikable qualities, I'm like, do I want her to win after all? Is it okay if she just dies? And that's why she's an interesting character, because she's complex and complicated.
Yeah, right. Because if this is, a lot of people have said, well, this is a male character. Like Tony Soprano killed people all the time, and yet we still felt sympathy for him. Dany comes from different origins than most anybody else on this show, and she betrays herself later on when she's talking to Jon or talking to Sansa, and says, "My whole goal has always been the Iron Throne." And you see this scene with Jorah, you see this scene definitely with Sansa. What's your takeaway from these two women coming together in such a titanic way, and initially getting that connection like girlfriends, and then all of a sudden the hand moves away from the other hand, and we see the division again? What do you think about that, Haley?
I think it makes Dany look like a fool, frankly.
Yeah? Okay.
I think they all know what they're up against, and she's...
Them's fighting words!
I'm serious, though.
I love it.
She's been beyond the wall. She lost a dragon.
Yep.
She knows what's coming, and she still can't play nice with Sansa long enough to get through the battle.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't even have to mean it, especially if she was one of the ones going like, hey, Jon, you didn't have to tell Cersei exactly how you feel last season. Like, she didn't have to tell Sansa exactly how she feels.
Yeah.
And she kind of plays it like a fool with both of them. I think that she's right on the money. She wants that throne. That's what she cares about above all. And okay, so maybe I'm not the biggest Dany fan in the world, because I think she's an amazing conqueror, but she has not proven herself at all to be a ruler. She just leaves behind wreckage everywhere she conquers.
Yes.
I'm not encouraged by what we've seen here.
Yeah, and this is Dennis. You look at this. This lays the groundwork for what may happen during the battle and after the battle, depending on who wins or who loses. There is division here. Just when we thought there was going to be connection and peace, which I really enjoyed, because Jorah's the one that kind of gets her to go like, hey, you kind of
gotta go talk to
Sansa. And Dany initially comes in like, I don't know how we got off on the wrong foot. Well, maybe riding with your head and your nose up in the sky, thinking everybody owed you stuff, wasn't the best way to enter someone else's house. And so this kind of, you thought that she was kind of like coming towards her, but then that situation pops up and she says, what about the North? And Dany could have said, I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you guys are okay. We'll have a discussion about it.
Well, that's
but
the
any
thing.
threat to her power is immediately
But the
met
thing is
with,
the way they cut that scene makes it look like they may have had a conversation past that point.
Yeah, right, because they cut to
yeah,
the
it
war.
wasn't like the Jon Snow Daenerys conversation where the horns blew and they like, okay, we have to end this conversation. Let's go take care of bigger business.
Right.
That one they kind of just cut. So like possibly much like the Cersei Tyrion conversation from last season, maybe there's more to it that we're not getting. I hope so, because she just seems a bit foolish where she doesn't seem to want to give up anything. And remember, when she first started in the series, her goal was not the Iron Throne. Her goal was like, hey, my brother is an asshole. How do I get away from him?
Let me make this relationship work.
What would have been so hard about saying, well, I won't leave a king in the North, but I'll leave a warden in the North?
Yeah.
So
we'll rule together. We'll rule together.
Well, we know that's not going to happen.
You know what I mean? All right. Well, we move on to Theon showing up here. We kind of alluded to it earlier. Theon shows up and Sansa and them have a moment. She's really emotional. And I thought it was really smart of the director to keep the camera on Dany. Dany's almost like, what is this all about? Like she's almost like Sansa is the ruler that Dany could be.
Well, Dany's
isn't.
immediately mad because she knows Theon, she knows Yara, and she's mad that Theon didn't bring Yara and the Iron Fleet and that they stayed in the Iron Islands.
Right.
And Sansa, perhaps because she's not under the same pressure that Dany is, or perhaps just because of the type of character she is, she can sort of see the value in Theon being there and what that means for him. And like Theon knows that ground. Theon's proven himself a capable leader.
Right.
Like Theon, even on his own, is an asset. But Dany just sees a lack of ships, even though there's no water around.
Well, she's got bigger fish to fry. She can, right? Because now that Sansa doesn't have to be in charge of the whole picture, she can step back and let her emotions kind of be more of what rules her in that moment with Theon. And Dennis, are we shipping this now all of a sudden, Theon?
I hope not. I mean, I like
Is
that.
there time for that to be shipped?
Yeah, I just don't think that there is time for that.
Yeah.
It's nice that they have reconciled and that, he's trying to make amends, and so
because he helped her escape.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what made her so emotional because since the beginning of the season, she's been very standoffish, except for in that moment. I think with Dany too, it's like she made a deal with Yara, and now Yara is not there.
Right.
And to Theon, it's like, okay, you're here, but like I really made the deal with someone else. So.
It's like an agent that signs the big actor, and it's like, oh, we got to back pocket this other actor. It's like, but
the
only the
WGA
back
just had a whole thing about that.
showed up. Only the back pocketed actor showed up. Son of a gun. What are we going to do with this? So, hey, let's move on from that. This scene with Davos and the little girl, right? That's a stand-in for Stannis' daughter, isn't it?
Yes.
Like that moment. And
They even got the scar.
It was an interesting moment. Were they trying to just kind of like, was it once again this kind of like, okay, let's give Davos a moment to have him like come back to prominence in people's eyes and remember his good heart.
Yeah, I think that was definitely another sort of callback to tell you where this character's come from. I think to Dennis's point, it was one of the better handled callbacks because he wasn't like, remember when my favorite little girl burned to death? But and I love Davos, so I'm glad to see him get a little time before he probably immediately dies. I do want to touch on really quick. I know we moved on, but I don't see Sansa and Theon as romantic. I think those eyes were more like they sort of experienced their darkest hour together and came out of it by standing together. And when she's in this scenario where her whole home has been sort of been infiltrated by foreigners, more or less, that Dany doesn't even like her. People she doesn't know and who don't treat her well. She has this person who really came through for her at the moment that she most needs it. That's what I took from those scenes.
That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you survive something together. There's a kinship, a bond that occurs there. And maybe having him there brings her a little bit of peace. She can be a little bit vulnerable. Like you said, or I don't know if it was Haley who said, she hasn't shown emotion for anybody. This is the first time she's shown emotion for anybody, including her family. Reunion with her family. this was more of an authentic emotional expression from her. That was nice to see. Speaking of authentic emotional expressions, Tormund showed up and gave a big old hug to Jon Snow with Beric and other boys from the wall there, coming from House Umber. They tell Jon how they had to sneak around the Night King, and then they tell Jon, finally, we get a time clock on when these damn White Walkers are showing up from this conversation. This was great to see this. Look, personally, me, those are my favorite characters. Those the warrior dudes. That's what I relate to and connect to as a former military man. Those are the guys I connect to the most. So I love when they show up, and when each one of them dies, which I imagine they will, I will shed a tear while I'm watching. I'm warning all of you ahead of time now because we're watching the shows together. But this was nice to see them all reunited, right, Ashley? Just one more time.
Totally. Every time Tormund shows up, I'm thrilled. He was a delight throughout this episode.
Right.
It's funny because he's sort of he could have been a nothing character.
Yeah.
But he's turned into someone really, really special. And even though him and Brienne are never going to get married and have giant fierce babies, I love to watch him look at her. It's my favorite part of any episode.
Does it ever become creepy? Because I mean, that's what we talk about. The stare. Remember the male stare?
Yeah.
People talk about. He does think she's like just like beautiful in his way. Mm-hmm. So does it ever become creepy?
I was actually thinking about this during the episode, and I was like, this is a good gag, but when is it over the line? And then for me, when they brought it back was when he was like, if I was king, I would knight you 10 times over, because it's like he's not just objectifying her, he admires her and he respects her power.
Yeah. As does Jaime when he sees Brienne all by herself coordinating the battle preparations from the tower. He ignores Tyrion in the middle of the conversation to go and watch Brienne. And I don't know if I've ever bought a romantic situation with them. I always felt like they just have a very, very deep friendship, almost like Sansa and Theon, having gone through their experiences together on their journey. But who knows, as we go into this. Let's move on this. Bran says the Night King, when they're doing the preparations for war, says the Night King wants to come to him. It's a Harry Potter moment because he's got a mark on his thing, on his forearm, just like Harry, with the thing. And so the Night King knows so they're going to use him as bait. This is insane. Were you surprised by this at all? And do you think it's a wise policy?
Is it a wise policy?
Because you're setting up all these people to defend him.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that you are vastly outnumbered and you're not going to win the battle and the only chance you have is to take out the leader, then baiting him into an ideal situation for yourself, it makes sense. And if Bran is willing to give himself up for this, who knows? I mean, is it one of those situations? I mean, they talk about him and he represents kind of humanity because he has the memories and the history, and so if he dies, that kind of goes away. So I'm not sure. Before they said that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe they'll kill him off. But now I'm like, okay, I don't think so. I mean, they're not going to kill the Night King in this episode so early either. But
this is the thing that I thought about as I was watching the scene. We saw them lay the groundwork last season, where if you kill the head of a group, the whole group dies. Yeah. So if they kill the Night King, everyone else, and everyone else dies.
Well, yeah.
Is that a cop-out?
What are our zombie rules?
Yeah. Is that a cop-out though on the show? If they build up this battle for 8 seasons,
depends on if you think Cersei's the real foe or not.
Right.
So because that's why I put this to you guys.
What do you think? What do you think?
I don't care about the White Walkers. I don't care about the Night King. I don't care about the magic. If they take them out next episode, I will be perfectly happy.
Wow.
I would be great. I don't like zombies.
Okay, fair enough.
They're just not to my taste.
Fair enough. What do you think, Haley? Do you think it'd be a bit of a cop-out if they kill the Night King and everybody dies in an episode or two?
That's an interesting scenario because this is a series and series of novels built on subverting your expectations of how everything in fantasy should go. So that would be exactly the kind of move that we should expect. Like, oops, they're all dead and this was never the big fight.
Right.
But I also think that would just make people so mad and disappointed that I don't see it happening. I do think, however, that maybe episode 4, episode 5, that's going to be out of the equation, and then we'll move on to more human things and settling the world after the Night King, and maybe after magic, if you believe that theory, or you know, just resettling the world. I don't think we're going to see them fighting the Night King up until the grand finale of the show.
Right, and that's what it feels like. Yeah, if they take care of it, because the battle looks like it's going to start happening next episode.
Right.
So maybe over 2 episodes we have this this battle with the White Walkers, and then after that's all done, then we deal with whoever's left. Because I don't think the writers would have these machinations going on with Cersei and with Yara, everything being set up for after this battle if they weren't going to address it. I mean, I suppose that would be a way of subverting it, Haley, but I don't know. I would think it's a lot of wasted dialogue.
I think it would be a lot of wasted setup. You're right. I also, though, think that whatever Bran is working on is not going to work. Like, whatever, he's probably not going to die. Maybe he is because he's just like so powerful that it gets hard to tell the story at a certain point. But I do think that their strategy is going to backfire tremendously. And
you mean like with whatever they're doing with him in the Godswood?
Yeah, I don't know how, but we saw like when they tried to take dragons over the wall, how that went for them. So I think
that Bran was the face in the tree all along.
Oh, hey, maybe that was Brian. I do think that like something about that strategy is going to wind up like, I don't know, costing them their army or another dragon or Jon or Dany or something.
What do you think Tyrion and Bran talked about by that fire? Because they just see them sitting in and he's going to tell the whole story. Is this the key to the show? All of a sudden, this unshown scene between
possibly. I mean, he may give him some insights into in the history of Westeros that may lead him to form some sort of strategy. Because we know Tyrion is a voracious reader.
Yes.
Even before the Battle of Blackwater, he's like looking through books, trying to find some sort of strategy that he may employ himself. But I think maybe some story that he gets told by Bran, he gets to use later on. Not so much for this battle, but maybe the final battle with Cersei and the Golden Company and whatnot. And I don't dislike zombies, but it's not my favorite part of the show. I think we talked about this either last episode or on one of our podcasts where I'm like, because there's no motivation really with the zombies. Like, they want to destroy humanity, big deal. So it's not my favorite part, but I would be disappointed that if it was just like, okay, they killed the Night King and then everyone dies and then that's it and then everybody moves on. I think it needs to be more than just that. Somehow they've got to survive and not necessarily win, but almost like then fall back to King's Landing. And just there has to be some sort of way that this all works together versus just like, oh, you killed him, well, yay, and then move on.
It's tough. There's so little geography left. There's so little room for maneuvering. So Haley was like, maybe episode 5. And you're like, but that's the penultimate episode. Are we still fighting the Night King in the penultimate? That's only 2 episodes away.
I get what you're saying.
It's tough to try and parse it.
It's also a matter of where you think the series is going to leave off. Like how far into the new world will it take us? Or will it be like a cold cut just as somebody walks up to the throne? Like, we don't know. So it's
some title cards at the end.
Yes, it's a very mysterious timeline we're working with.
Well, we get, let's move on to that big reunion scene or reflection scene or nostalgic scene where they all sit around the fire. Jaime and Tyrion are joined by Brienne and Podrick, then Sir Davos and Tormund, and we get all these stories about all these people surviving the battles. And this is stuff that you see in war movies, right? That whole conversation with before tomorrow, when I get back, I'm gonna get that car, and you see all of that there, all of it played out. Then we have some great funny moments with Tormund drinking the Giants, telling his story, essentially doing what do you call it between men, the sausage measuring contest. Him and Jaime sitting directly in front of Jaime.
So funny.
Then slamming the milk after he finishes talking to him. They're all having the wine. Podrick has half a cup, really a full cup of wine. All of this gets bring out, and it leads to this incredibly beautiful, awesome moment where Brienne is knighted as the first Lady Knight in the history of the show. I don't know the books as well as you all do. I don't know if there's been another Lady Knight, but this I thought was a really fantastic moment. Ashley, what did you think?
I thought it was really gorgeous. I don't think there is a female knight of Brienne's stature in the books.
Okay.
People who are more familiar with Fire and Blood, I'm sure will correct me in the comments if that's not the case. I'm sorry. I thought it was a really moving, meaningful scene. I teared up when it happened, and I loved the moment. We love it for Brienne because it is everything that she wants. I love that she looks to Podrick for permission to do it, because Podrick is like low-key good at everything and like a great barometer for whether or not we should do something. We also see that reflected when he sings later. But it's a great moment for Jaime, like you alluded to earlier, that Jaime's just like, this is what's right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen for you. It's the only gift I have left to give.
Yeah. With this scene, what do you take away from this scene other than everyone's going to die? But the knighting is really interesting because the things they say, the things Jaime says, he violated every code of everything he says when he's knighting Brienne, which I found to be an interesting, ironic moment. What did you think of this whole scene and the knighting?
Well, their dynamic has become more interesting since last season's finale, when she was like, fuck honor, and he was like, fuck honor, you would never say that. But then he mirrors that at the beginning of this episode, like, this is beyond honor and things like that. But I think that is truly the heart of their love connection, whatever that may be. If you see it as platonic, a lot of people see it as romantic. I see it as somewhere in between. Certainly their bath scene those seasons ago was not asexual.
Right, fair.
But the connection between them is honor, and as much as he has betrayed his honor, he didn't start out that way. Before he became the Kingslayer, he, valued his honor to a certain extent, and has only grown to do so more as the show progresses. I do like that the vibe of the fire pit was essentially like every single one of them is a police officer one day away from retiring.
That wasn't even supposed to be here today.
Yeah, exactly. I love it, and I think that type of scene is my favorite on the show. I know a lot of people are a little have beef with the fact that we haven't had any battles or even sword fights to this point, but my favorite parts of the show have always been people talking, and that was a really good talking scene.
I thoroughly agree. What do you think, Dennis? You love that scene. What'd you take out of it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought Tyrion, once he's like, we're all going to survive this. Like, no, that's the first clue to know that. You just killed everybody here by saying that. It was a nice touching moment between the two. I find their relationship somewhere in the middle, where maybe it's more of an unrequited love, more one way from Brienne to Jaime. I mean, Jaime does have feelings for Brienne.
It's one of those things in another universe, maybe, but not in this one.
So,
it was nice that it was Jaime. It was a nice moment between the two.
And he's fully owning brother lover now. He's like just out there, like, I sleep with my sister, I'd do it again.
I mean, what does he have to lose at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
he's gonna die.
if he ever goes back to King's Landing, he's like extra screwed. So, and not in the way that he's hoping for.
Yeah. It's like the moment in Almost Famous when the plane's going to crash and they're like, oh, I've always loved you. I'm with you. It's what happens when you're about to face death. When I was in the military, you talk to people before. I never saw a theater of war, but you talk to people who've gone, and they talk about that. You have those conversations before you go out on your first day on patrol, first day in war, whatever, because you just want to have some kind of like release, And I think the Gendry and Arya thing was a release as well, a form of release as well, And so you get that in this moment. I love this entire scene. Love them all coming together. Warriors, in one form or another, all coming together to have this conversation with each other and let us fall back in love with these characters.
Yes.
And so that we can feel their deaths that might be coming over the next 2 episodes. And Arya, speaking of Arya and the Hound had themselves a little bit of a mini reunion there, which kind of built upon what happened last episode. Did you like this, Dennis? And then Barrack showing up, of course, talk about the Lord of Light and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, I liked it because it kind of showed the Hound was surprised at Arya and how her nature was now. She's like, he remembers a kid that wouldn't shut up and was talking about killing so-and-so. And now that Arya is much more mature and experienced and she has killed people, it's more... less of a game of her talking, and just now she knows. And so I like that moment between the two. And she was questioning, like, why are you here? Like, you've never done anything.
You never fought for anybody but yourself.
Yeah. And he said, oh, I fought for you, which is true. I mean, when he fights Brienne at that time, there's nothing really because he's already, at that point, I think he had been turned away from the Vale, right?
Yeah.
He could have just killed Arya too several times, just to make his life easier, or left her by the side of the road, or anything else.
Yeah, but I mean, he seems to have this protective nature of the Stark women, because he did that with Sansa in King's Landing, and then Arya later.
Right.
I like that. I like that moment. And she didn't fight it. And remember when she she had the Hound on her list, and then
And Barrack.
and Barrack, yeah.
For a little bit, yeah.
And when she goes to the House of Black and White, like she plays what was it called, the Game of Lies or whatever,
Yes.
Right.
and she talks about how she hates him, wants to kill him, and then she actually gets called out on that in that game.
Yeah. Haley, you look at this. I want to bring something up for you to give me some guidance on here. You hear with Gendry, we already talked about their reunion, but Arya questions him about the Red Woman, about the Melisandre. Then Arya is there with Barrack and the Hound, and once again, Lord of the Light, Melisandre. Melisandre, we saw at the end of last season with Varys said she was going to play a part here. Is this part that she's going to be playing connected to Arya? Because they seem to only drop her name around her.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Is this a way of the Raiders kind of subtly laying the groundwork? Does this have something to do with it?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure what the Lord of Light has to offer Arya, being the character that she is. I don't know. You threw a curveball at me. I wasn't expecting
Something to
that.
think about.
But
Can
it
Barrack
is.
pass this on to her? Will Arya
Yeah.
get resurrected multiple times
interesting.
as a warrior?
No. If I were
sound like
writing it, I would give Arya the power to bring people back to life because we gave her power over death, and then you would give her power over
that's
life.
nice.
Oh,
instead.
interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's something to think about.
You just like broke my brain with
I like
that
that, though, but she
idea.
doesn't. She's not a character of faith, though.
No,
so I'm
she's
not
not.
sure how she'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
I do. It was a very not subtle way of being like, remember the Red Woman? She's
That's what I mean. They're laying the groundwork. Seem to be brought up multiple times with Arya. All right, let's get to this moment. That's because we're running out of time for this recap. There's two moments we got to get to, and that moment between Sam and Jorah was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
If you know that Jorah refused to take the sword back of his house, Longclaw. He gets offered Heartsbane by Samwell. This is a fantastic moment. Ashley, I did a video for Collider a couple days ago that was off of, I think, Dave Trumbore's article they wrote for Collider.com about the importance of Valyrian Steel, and where it all is. And you look at the history of how Jorah lost Longclaw to see him get offered a Valyrian Steel sword again right before a battle. Pretty momentous scene.
Tremendous. And also echoing in season 1 when his dad gives Longclaw to Jon
Yes.
and has it reforged so that it's a wolf head instead of a bear. And because for Jon, that's a big, like, sort of leveling up moment. So for Jorah to have, I love Jorah.
Yeah.
And also at the beginning of that scene, they cut him low with your favorite character.
Oh, yeah.
Where she refuses to listen to him
Yeah.
and kind of is like, I'm the leader of the house, you have to do what I say.
Yeah,
And then she
Lyanna.
just takes off with her troops. So to
Right.
see that he is being given respect by anyone other than Daenerys is also pretty monumental.
Yeah.
And we got the little Sam and Gilly scene before that,
Yeah,
too, which
that
was
was
really,
really
which
nice.
was
That's
really
true.
sweet. Yeah.
I actually thought Lyanna was really gentle with him. She's like the queen of spilling tea, and she didn't come for him at all for
Blood is blood.
dishonoring their
That's
house.
true,
Blood is
yeah.
blood, right?
I fully expected her to just give him one of her classic, like, I stand up and tell you how much you suck scenes. And she didn't. I don't know. That kind of. I'll be curious. You guys say in the comments, like, were you surprised by that? Because that was one of the things I feel like was most predicted of this season was Lyanna was going to tell him what for.
It makes
Right,
me
right.
wonder if would she have known him before he was sent away? Like, would they have any sort of relationship that she's
Maybe.
leaning back on?
But she would know
I don't-
of him,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think she.
I would think he would have been gone by the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Because how
She
old
would have
was
been
she?
too
Like
young.
10?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very interesting. Good observation.
Yeah. No, that was a good back.
It's like it's your job or
But
something.
it is. Yeah, right.
Look.
It was a really touching scene, though. I didn't mean to derail you
I
from
like
like
it.
the
I like it because
emotional value.
Lyanna's my gal, and she should be
Yeah.
on the Iron Throne and cut it out. But yeah, those two having a nice moment. And Jorah again bowed as respectfully as he could. He understands. He's a man who's lived he's paid for his mistakes. He's lived this whole journey. Maybe Lyanna, as a good ruler, sees that as well, so doesn't need to spill the tea on him because she knows he's covered in tea and he understands that. He understands that. Makes
Actually,
sense.
the tea bag.
Yeah, he's had enough hot water poured on him. But you look at this, Dennis, you look at this scene with the Heartsbane and Jorah. I mean, how powerful is this moment? Because Jorah doesn't refuse the sword like he refused the sword with Jon in that moment out there beyond the wall. This he takes. And do you think he takes it because he finally feels like it's the right time to take it, and also because Sam can't use that damn sword, so he can do better with it.
That, and I think also with Sam, he has a relationship with Sam.
Right.
Sam saved him,
Right.
right,
With the grayscale.
with the grayscale, and so I think they have that relationship. Also, he knows that Sam's father and brother were killed. And so I think refusing this is just, almost like a slap in the face to someone that he already knows is, a little, apprehensive of the Dragon Queen. So I think in that moment, it was right for him to take it.
Yeah. Everyone's getting their moments.
Yeah.
Because we're about going to die. But let's go to the last scene, and this is something that's really powerful. I'll start back again with you, Dennis. Dany and Jon in the crypts in front of the Lyanna Stark statue. I think Jon's down there on purpose. Maybe. I don't know if he knows Dany's coming, but he's down there on purpose in front of that statue. Remember last time he was in front of Ned Stark's statue, and a lot of people who are great on the internet brought back that line where I'll tell you the story about your parents, blah, blah, blah.
The next time we meet.
Next time we meet, and there's Ned Stark in the middle of him and Sam. But you see this, he's in front of the statue. He finally tells Dany, and it only took one more episode for him to tell Dany the truth about the situation, and Dany does not have a good reaction to this, immediately questions it, doesn't say that's great that you found out who your parents are, it's awesome. She immediately feels a threat to her throne. She doesn't want to talk about how icky it is that she's been sleeping with her nephew, because the Targaryens, if you read the books, the Targaryens very much into the family love, and so you see this situation here, but they get cut off before it can build. Once again, just like Sansa and Dany got cut off before it could build. This is laying a little bit of groundwork here. This is not going to be a seamless transition of power with Dany going into the Iron Throne.
She's got about 6 of her feet in her mouth right now.
Yeah. I mean, did this surprise you?
Hers
her
and all of the
reaction?
dragons.
Her reaction? No, that is total Dany reaction. She was not going to be like, oh, okay, you take over now. You know what I mean? That's just not in her personality.
No.
And then, secondly, they purposely cut it off because you don't know if Jon Snow might have said, look, I just learned this. This has nothing to do. I'm not trying to take anything away from
I was expecting that to happen.
I think they wanted to create more tension. They wanted to get to the battle in the next episode, and they don't have time to talk about this. This is something that they may have to talk about in maybe episode 4. When maybe a lot of the alliances that they've made now are going to be fractured after this battle. I'm guessing they're not going to win this battle, but they're going to survive it.
Well, because there's 4 more episodes to go.
They're not gonna, but I mean, they're going to, there's going to be some deaths and whatnot. And I think a lot of those alliances that they have will be fractured and split apart. And maybe this is the seeds that they're planting for basically the 2 biggest ones, right? Because if those 2 can't be connected and working on the same page, there's no hope for anybody else. I fully expected Dany to react like that.
If Sam dies,
don't you put that out in the world.
and who else knows about this?
Bran.
Oh, and Bran.
And Gilly.
If Bran, Gilly, and Sam die, does Dany use that as the kind of end around to take these power away from Jon? Is that a possibility? Dennis talks about after the battle what might happen if certain people die who have this secret, who know this story. Is there something more devious Dany could do here? The Targaryen blood kind of flares up.
That's very interesting, and it's not something I guess I had really considered in my mind for no good reason at all. I've just always assumed Sam will live. I just don't know why. I just think also because he's like the avatar for George R. R. Martin, which Martin has said. He said that in interviews.
Good points. All right,
but
he could live.
I could see that, and it actually could be an interesting post-battle setup where Jon doesn't actually want the throne, but if he sees that she's becoming the villain, then maybe he decides he does. I'm not sure if that's how it's gonna go. I mean, obviously none of us are sure of anything, but I just really, my biggest takeaway from the crypts is where the shit is Ghost. Where is Ghost?
We saw Ghost.
We did?
Yeah, it was
Where
in the
was
back.
When he was
when the
Black
missed
Brothers
him.
were standing up on the wall, he was sort of in the background
With
looking
Sam.
like a 2 big dog.
All right,
I'll take that.
That was
way in
it,
a
but
corner,
he was
though.
there. He was.
I'll take the background.
He was.
Wow, thank you. I'm
He's
calm.
gonna
Look,
rip someone else's
Yeah.
throne
They're
next
trying to
episode.
save money. That's what I mean. These past 2 episodes, they're
As
like,
close as we can get to bottle episodes on this show.
because they're spending all the money in the next episode, right? So they're like, these last two are like, we'll just sit here and you talk to you and you talk to you, and then
I remember when Ghost showed up, I was like, oh, Haley's gonna love this.
Yeah, I totally missed it though. I'm glad because I was getting to the point where I was like, could you just frame this with like some white fur poking into the frame? Like, I'll take it.
Photo bombing.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's your takeaway from this scene, Ashley? Do you fear now that they're like, because they're dealing with Cersei? Can they set up Dany as another pseudo villain as this president? Like, does this become confusing for the fans though? That we have Cersei and Dany?
Only if you ever thought Dany was good.
Okay.
I've never fully been behind Dany as a savior.
Okay.
Particularly because we had like 3 season arcs in a row where she was the white lady savior, and there were some weird optics around it, which
That
this
was very
episode
weird.
actually addressed, which was really cool. Only if you believe Dany is like the Jesus figure, right? Because there's sort of always one in Western literature. I would think it would be very strange if it came down to like a Dan v. Dan v. Jon thing, because we know there's going to be a Cersei v. Jaime thing.
Okay.
So I think to echo that with 2 familial sets, I think would be strange. But I definitely think we're going to get a Targaryen flare-up just in time for something tragic to happen and them to be reunited toward the end.
Well, I want to give some love to the chat people. A lot of people saying Nymeria is going to show up in this battle with her pack of wolves, with her pack of wolves to save Arya in some way. Some people are thinking that one of the dragons is going to kill Dany in some way, or shape, or form. Maybe the way Drogon was looking at Jon and the Dany situation. Who knows how that's going to play out? Because is Jon's connection with the dragons because he's of higher connection to the throne? Will that supersede Dany's connection? I don't know. There's, everything's in play, I feel like. So it's something to consider. So the fans are throwing out a lot of these things.
Nymeria and the wolf pack would be cool because in the book, the book's Arya has these dreams about leading a wolf pack. So that would be cool. If
wouldn't that be something? I took away from this scene that, oh crap, I don't know what to do now with Dany. Like, I really don't. Because I tried to veer into the place of trying to forgive her. She's a young person, terrible circumstances of how she achieved this situation. You know, parents dying, being sold off, watching her brother die, who was threatening her unborn child, losing Drogo to a trick, and then losing Drogo and then having him brought back to a trick, and then having to somehow find her way back. I thought her scene with Sansa was great, where she said, "Look, who manipulated who here? I went to fight by my love's side in a battle that I have nothing to do with." Even though overall it does have to do with her ruling this kingdom. So, but now I don't know, because Jolie Lash for Collider.com wrote a great article breaking down all the 7 seasons of what Dany has done and learned and not learned from these 7 seasons. Is she a good ruler? I don't know. And this concerns me, the way she reacted of like, and you believed your best friend and you believed this, and blah, 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 and you're just like, whoa.
And when she said to Sansa, who manipulated who, I was like, Sansa, she's manipulating you.
Yeah, right. I mean, and to kind of what Dennis said a little bit, I do think it's the way it was written. And if there was some sort of off-screen conversation, it's a type of writing I really don't like. It's false manufactured drama when the show has plenty of legitimate drama to mine from. There's a part of me that hopes like they did have an off-screen conversation where he was like, I don't want your throne, we're all good. Because I don't know. It's just so manufactured to make that happen.
Don't want them to fight.
Well, not that way. Why would he even start the story that way? Like, I'm coming for your throne is basically how that sounded.
Yeah.
Especially after she was like, who manipulated who?
Right.
If then she thinks that maybe he's known about this somehow. I don't know. I don't love the writing of how that went down. And I wish that it would have been broached in more of a way like, hey, girl, I know that this is going to make you angry, but I don't want your throne. But I have to tell you.
You know I can't lie, right?
Exactly.
She brings the wolf, stroking the wolf. Listen, hey, can you sit down? I got to talk to you about something.
You want to light a candle and put it in my mom's hand? Oh, what? Spoilers!
No, but Dan, as you look at this is a good, this episode did a really good, people might complain that nothing happened. I thought a lot happened in this episode in terms of what we've seen in Game of Thrones multiple times. Political machinations, political maneuverings brings here. You see this almost connection between Sansa and Dany get broken. You see this Jon and Dany connection get broken. So is she starting? Will she start to be suspicious of the Starks in this situation as it goes down, as the battle rages on? Do you sense that she'll make some critical mistake or make some kind of moment that is self-serving to her possibility of ruling?
Possibly, in just her stubbornness to not compromise. I'm assuming if there is no other discussion with Sansa after that scene.
Yeah.
That's why, I think, Ashley had talked about who would have been good rulers in the past. I talked about Renly Baratheon. He was smart enough to know that even if he took King's Landing, he became the one true king, that he was going to give the North pretty much to the Starks.
Right.
And to keep them,
they would have autonomy in essence of the North.
Yeah, as long as they pledged, fealty to him. And this is something that Dany doesn't have in her personality or capable of. Her hubris is a little too much in that regard. And so I'm worried. I'm worried that that may, people have been speculating about the death of the Tarleys and how that may play back into her possible demise. So just these things that don't look so great for her, you know?
Yeah. She doesn't have good people skills. I think you could say that. But then again, she's also been lied to and betrayed her entire life. So that builds up a natural defensiveness and suspicion as a first reaction,
which is similar to Cersei and her experience,
right.
similar to Sansa. Dennis said on the podcast, is Sansa kind of like mini Cersei?
Oh, she is now full on. When I was watching, I think was it the first episode, last week's episode, the way she's talking now, her speech patterns are mimicking Cersei now. The way that she's talking, the way she kind of talks down to people and whatever with this kind of salty dialogue.
Yeah. She's also 100 feet tall. They had the scene where they all stood up, and I was like, oh, Sophie Turner is so tall.
Yeah. But Sophie's willing to show emotion to these situations. Sansa is where you don't necessarily see Dany doing that in with other people, and so I wonder how that's going to play out. We should touch on one last thing. That's the song. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the song and what it's connected to? I can read what we have here from other people who've written about it. It's the song from it's most prominently when the Ghost of Highheart requests it to be sung to someone in the third book, A Storm of Swords. She calls the song she's called My Jenny's Song. Who is she that they're talking about? I don't see.
The Ghost of Highheart is like a little forest witch who comes and shows up and reads prophecies. I guess.
Like forest witches do.
Kind of like Maggie the Frog. It's a very similar archetype that gave Cersei her prophecy as well. She comes upon the Brotherhood Without Banners when Arya is in their custody.
I want to give credit here to Polygon. They wrote this. It's about Jenny of Oldstones, an apparent descendant of the first men who eventually tied the knot with Duncan Targaryen. Duncan loved Jenny so much that he broke off his betrothal to the daughter of Lionel Baratheon to marry Jenny. While the king, Duncan's father, attempted to have the marriage undone, Duncan gave up his claim to the throne to remain with Jenny. Then there was a Baratheon rebellion. Jenny was accepted into the court. She brought with her a woman she was friends with, a woods witch, which is what Ashley's referring to, who was either a dwarf or one of the children of the forest.
Yeah, she's little.
And then eventually, Duncan and likely Jenny died in the tragedy of Summerhall, an accident reportedly caused by King Aegon's attempt to bring dragons back to the Seven Kingdoms long after they had gone extinct. The castle exploded. However, among the likely survivors was the woods witch that Jenny brought with her to court. In fact, based on their physical descriptions and their connection, this witch is likely the same woman who requests to hear Jenny's song, and she prophesied something woods witches often do, that the prince that was promised would come from the line of Prince Aerys and Princess Rhaella, Daenerys and Rhaegar's mother and Jon's grandparents.
And these events take place in the Dunk and Egg prequel book that was published. Dunk being that King Duncan, Aegon being Aegon Targaryen, brother of Aemon Targaryen, former Grand Maester at the wall.
Yeah.
This thing, the wall.
The prince that was promised seems to be lining up for these little subtle hints that Jon may be the one on the throne at the end here. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that could that could point to either of them, right? Because they're both of that
Does it
same
mean
lineage.
does it mean prince or princess?
Yeah,
Or is
right.
it a gendered word?
Good
Could
call.
it be their child, which is
Right.
still my
Just like Brienne is Sir Brienne, even though she's a knight. She's not Lady Brienne, Knight of,
Well, and Missandei
Right.
last season was like, it's a genderless word.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
for all you theorists out there in the audience.
I think on one of the podcasts we had discussed whether or not, I think all three of us were talking about whether.
Oh yeah, because I so threw Haley under the bus and was like, explain.
Explain Azor Ahai's prophecies,
And the
please.
prince who was prophet.
Yes.
So rewatching the season before we started these reviews, I noticed that they actually mentioned the Princess's Promise like a couple times, and it was mostly the Red Woman, Melisandre. She said that she thought the Princess's Promise was Stannis at first,
Yes.
and now she thinks it's Jon Snow. So
yeah.
And they talk about the red comet and the red star, and the red star was in the sky when Dany and Jon, I can't say their names, when they were both born, and what does that mean? And
I love this. And I know we got to wrap up. DM Forte, he commented, I can see the Night King leaving the battle at some point, flying to King's Landing to turn Cersei and the Golden Company. The North holds Winterfell, but Battlefront now moves from the south. Could Cersei become what Lady Stark was?
like a Lady Stoneheart?
Yeah, Lady Stoneheart. Could Cersei become Lady Stoneheart down the road in this whole thing?
Or she could become the Night's Queen.
Yeah, or the Night's Queen. Woo! It's all in play. And
She's
that's
up
what I
to
love.
no good no
that's
matter
right,
what.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Frozen or unfrozen, zombie or not, she's up to no good. Dennis, would that be kind of a letdown for you if that happened, or would you like to be excited?
him going to King's Landing
Yeah.
wouldn't be disappointing, but Cersei just turning to the Night's Queen, I think when she dies, which I think she will, it needs to be much more than her. She needs to be her. That's like people talk about the Clegane Bowl.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
The Hound of the Mountain. Yeah.
I'm a little
Good
less
night.
excited than before, just
Right.
because the Mountain now is this zombie-like character versus not like he was saying much before, but he felt that he was more like him.
There you go. There it is. All
We
right.
pay him so much less when he doesn't speak.
All right. Well, is there anything else you guys want to touch on? Did I miss anything? Are we good?
I think
I think we're good.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. All right. That's our recap of episode 2. They haven't released the title yet as we've been recording this, so you'll forgive us.
Enemies
for not
from the
mentioning-
East, right?
Enemies from the East is what the rumor is.
Oh, okay.
But then I saw other titles out there, something to do with I don't know what, something to do with the Rightful Queen. Something called the Rightful Queen is possibly a title as well.
Which is weird. These 2 episodes don't really have any big reveals,
Yeah.
deaths, or
in their
anything
titles,
like,
in the rumor titles at all. But that's our recap and review of that episode 2 of Game of Thrones season 8. We had a great time watching it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show as well. Let us know what you thought in the comments section below. It's always fun to read. I've been loving the chat. The chat is fantastic. The chat is so lively. Really appreciate all the theories and speculations and all that jazz. It's fun to read through. Sorry I couldn't read all of them because obviously it's a jam-packed show, a lot going on than we thought. But we'll be back next week as well to recap and review episode 3 of season 8. Let's go around the table. Ashley, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. The V is very important if you want to be able to find me. Check out What the Throne, and also check out my personal podcast, Geek History Lesson. We're doing a live event in Los Angeles. The links are pinned to the top of my socials. Please come. Thank you.
Go. Yeah, go see that. I've done it there. It's great to do live shows over there with those people there.
Yeah.
Haley, how can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Haley Fouch. You can find me on Instagram at Haystack McGroovy, and you can find me pretty much every day on Collider.com.
Are you writing any Game of Thrones stuff this week for Collider.com or no?
I don't have anything on book yet, but we just saw the episode,
Yeah, we
so
did.
we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm keeping close tabs on that. Been enjoying the Collider.com coverage. Dennis, where can
Awesome.
people find you, brother?
You guys can find me on Twitter at ThinkHero, Instagram Dennis.tzng. I also do the Game of Thrones podcast with Ashley over there, What the Throne. You can check out new episodes on Mondays.
Oh, someone said bring back Littlefinger as a zombie. Oh my, wouldn't that be something? Machinations with the Night King. All right, and thanks everybody for watching. Follow me at The Roke Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And like I said, please share this video on your social media. Subscribe to Collider for more Game of Thrones content we will have all week. Game of Thrones content we'll be having all week here. We love the show, so we will show it with that content. Thanks everybody for watching. We will see you next time for another episode of Thrones Talk.